Yeah, me and my friends, we like to we like to dig up corpses at night. It's frowned upon in certain cultures. I know, but there's a story behind it. A tale, even. Some might even call it a legend. First off, we aren't really digging up corpses. Not really. We're corpse swapping. There's a difference there somewhere. A deeper meaning. I'm sure of it. But Vic, what exactly is a corpse swap? I hear you ask. The principle of a corpse swap is, in its essence, alarmingly simple. You dig up any number of graves, pop the coffin and all, and shuffle the corpses around. But do not be fooled by the seemingly straightforward nature of it. There are countless techniques and styles to master before you unearth your very first carcass.
But why?
I hear you say. It all started when I was 8. You see, I was born with a phantom itch I couldn't seem to scratch. The itch, I called it. Something deep in my mind struggling to dig itself out, like a bug, I suppose. A cold, whispering, flesh-burrowing bug. Of course, being only 8, I had no idea how to deal with it. My parents, God bless their souls, they tried everything. Soccer, baseball, dancing, chess, goldfish, even a trampoline. But nothing worked. I kept acting out, getting myself into trouble daily, teasing, cursing, skipping school, even hitting other kids. But nothing would rid my soul of that dreadful itch. Until I saw my grandpa dead. It was an open casket funeral. He was ancient, like 90-something, so he was all wrinkly and pale. Smelled kinda funny, too. But it was beautiful to see a blank, empty vessel like that, devoid of life and soul and consciousness. Truly glorious. So I did it. I jabbed my finger right up his nose. Can't say why, really. Instinct or reflex or something, but to my utter amazement, that cursed itch faded in an instant, and I was left with the answer to my life's true meaning. Corpses. Fast forward 7 years, and 20-something failed exhumations later, and the itch was back with a vengeance. Combine the nature of the itch with puberty, and you've got a troubled, raging, horny, corpse-addicted teenage mutant. I feel this is a good place to clarify something important. My infatuation with the dearly departed was never sexual in any way. A lot of people assume that. I don't know why. I mean, can't a guy dig up the odd corpse without being labeled as sexual deviant pervert? Moving on, I was in a bad place. A dark place. The pitch-black darkness of the abyssal void place. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't communicate. In all essence, I was nothing but a twitching, nervous, friendless, anxiety-ridden mess. But then I realized I wasn't alone. I hadn't noticed before. I guess I was too wrapped up in my own depressing, cathartic quest, but it suddenly dawned on me. Everyone else was just like me. Every single kid in this godforsaken town was messed up in some way or another. Depressed, burdened, violent, alcoholic, drug-addled. Messed up? And that's how the Corpse Corps was founded. It wasn't for everyone, of course. In total, we had a little over 30 recruits. Only 6 made the final cuts, and I can't remember them all. But KG definitely auditioned. Lewis, too. Ben, Hinton, Laura, Kyle. That guy with the face. Natalie, River, Grant, Michelle. A whole bunch of other red shirts. Don't worry, though. We didn't bury them. They just required other forms of release. Release from the itch. "This one is all effed up," Nate yelled from the 6 feet deep hole. "Smells awful." I was a couple graves down, digging up a Mrs. Trench. Penny was perched over the hole, manning the buckets, and I figured we had to be no more than a foot from the coffin. "Suck it up," I yelled. "We're almost there." On this particularly fine evening, we were playing a game of word combinations. Penny and I were digging up Mrs. Trench, while Nate and Jules were unearthing the fine carcass of a Mr. Jeremy Foote. Trench Foot. I'm sure you are giggling uncontrollably right now. Raz and Bree were taking the night off, so it was just the 4 of us. Oh, and Grimfell, of course. Grimfell was always around. We didn't have much money, but we traded him whatever we could find on the dead. We'd always find something. A necklace, earrings, wedding rings, the odd keepsake. In return, we'd look the other way while we dragged the freshly exhumed corpses around the graveyard. "We're here!" I yelled excitedly, banging the exhuminator on the coffin lid with some force. "About damn time," I heard Jules complain. Penny hauled up the last remaining buckets of dirt like a champ and climbed down to help me to open the old lid. Some of those suckers can really be fidgety, and this one seemed particularly unwilling to unveil its treasures. "Hand me the crowbar, would you?" Penny said. "You hand me the crowbar," I demanded. "Vic, dude," she raised her eyebrows, "you have a bad case of spaghetti arms. Better let me." I sighed and handed her the crowbar. That's really no way to talk to your Lord Mortician, but I let it slide. She was the champion disentombor after all. She smiled teasingly and cracked the lid with an effortless yank. "See?" she grinned wildly. "Me muscle, you weakling." Yeah, I said. Let's just get on with it. Sure thing, weakling," she laughed as she threw open the lid. Penny's grin suddenly faded. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Is it a liquid one?" "No," she said, wrinkling her brow. "Come here. Take a look at this." I edged my way around the coffin and was soon enough staring down at a rather fresh-looking carcass. Mrs. Trench had curly blonde hair, a rosy complexion, and wore a fine blue evening dress. She didn't look half bad for a dead woman. "What?" I asked. "What am I supposed to be looking at?" "There." Penny pointed at the lid. "Look." I squinted confusedly. What was that? Is that Yep, Penny said. Bloody scratch marks. Check out her fingers. I turned my gaze to Mrs. Trench's fingers. How did I not notice before? They were a complete mess. Pulpy, fleshy stubs, like she'd been clawing at the rough wooden lid for days on end. I swallowed deeply. That's messed up, I murmured. That's really messed up. Sure is, Penny said. Now let's haul her up. Penny climbed the ladder and lowered the stretcher. It was basically just assorted planks nailed haphazardly together in my dad's garage, but you'd be surprised to see how easy it made the ascension. We gently lifted Mrs. Trench onto it. Her delicate frame was suspiciously heavy. What the hell did they stuff her with? Penny asked. Bricks, I shrugged. Cement, wet sand. Chicken nuggets? All right, let's do it. We climbed up and slowly started pulling the rope. When I designed the system, I'd secretly imagined a complex arrangement of pulleys and hydraulics and other engineer-esque doohickeys, but after realizing that I was utterly incompetent, it ended up being planks tied to a rope. Almost there, I huffed exhaustedly. Shut up and pull, weakling, Penny said. After 5 grueling minutes, we finally got Mrs. Trench out of her trench. I slumped down on the ground, covered in sweat, wheezing pathetically. Penny didn't even seem fazed. I have never felt more emasculated in my life. She was staring at the headstone, looking rather perplexed. What's up? I gasped, trying to sound as manly as possible. This can't be right, she said. What can't? Jules wandered over to her. Jules looked at Mrs. Trench, then back at the headstone, then back at Mrs. Trench again. This continued for a while. I would have joined them, but I was busy squeezing air back into my lungs. No way, Jules finally said. No way. What? I demanded. She died, Penny started, 50 years ago. I instantly got back on my feet and scurried over to them like an asthmatic rat. I stared at the headstone, then at Mrs. Trench, then back at the headstone again, and this went on for quite a while. Typo? I suggested. Several typos? Penny shrugged. That sure as hell doesn't look like a 50-year-old corpse to me. Grave swap? Jules said. Have we done her before? I shook my head and conferred with the map. No, I said. Definitely new. Who the hell cares? Nate interjected. Let's just finish this. I stared at him silently. Nate was covered in filth. And I mean covered. Brown crap all over. His otherwise neat facade in shambles. No longer that cute Nate guy. What the hell happened to you? Penny asked. I told you my guy was all messed up, he sniffed. Absolutely fell the hell to pieces when we moved him. I walked over to Mr. Foot. Or, rather, what was left of Mr. Foot. Nate was right. He was a liquid mess of sludge and body parts, but that's not what caught my eye. We'd seen liquids before. It happened from time to time. Completely liquefied remains. I guess it had something to do with the chemistry or something. Science. No. What caught my eye was, well, the head. What the hell is up with his head? I said. Right? Nate slouched over. Have you ever seen anything like it? We just stood there staring at it. It was something else, all right. a split skull right down the middle. The head opened like an avocado or something, a bony avocado atop a disgusting brownish pool of corpse soup seasoned with the odd, rotting body part. "This is getting weird," Jules said. "Let's just get it over with." We all silently agreed, quickly hustling back to our respective swap squads. I had a terrible feeling, like the itch was back, but this time it was warning me, slithering its slimy tendrils right into my nervous system. I could see it in the others, too. This wasn't normal. This was not your run-of-the-mill corpse swap. Penny grabbed the rope and started pulling. We weren't going far, 30 feet maybe, but as soon as I joined her, I realized something wasn't right. It seemed heavier than before, to a point that we now could hardly move it at all. "What the hell?" I said. "Are you pulling at all?"
"Yes, weakling," she huffed. "I'm giving it all I got."
What happened next can't really be explained in words. I mean, I'm sure it can. I'm just not convinced that I can. A poet could do it, probably. A mad prophet, more than likely. An insane cultist, definitely. Painting a picture of the grotesque chaos that ensued requires a certain detached mindset. You would have to completely disregard silly notions such as sanity or even reality. Penny fell first. I don't know if it was some meaning behind it or just pure coincidence, but the moment she disappeared, I felt the itch writhing in my brain like never before. Her screams followed, guttural, primal wails of agony and fear. In the panic and confusion, I just dropped the rope and stared dumbfoundedly as she was dragged down into Mrs. Trench's grave. Jules and Nate came running, each of them gripping an oozing body part, a hand and a half a leg, I think.
"Penny!"
Jules yelled hysterically. I'm not the heroic type, I'll gladly admit it. Nor am I the thinking type. I'm the doer type. It's my DNA, I guess. Science. I just do things before my brain catches up to my body, like putting my finger up my dead grandpa's nose, or digging up corpses for no other conceivable reason than to move them, or jumping into graves to save a damsel in distress. Penny wasn't your average damsel in distress, though, unless, of course, that entails the damsel beating up the knight in shining armor on a semi-regular basis. But she was in distress. I landed rather awkwardly on top of the coffin lid, snapping the brittle wood into fine splinters. Disoriented as I was, it took me a while to realize where Penny was. Inside the coffin. Was all I could hear between frantic, hoarse gasps. I stumbled around awkwardly and reached into the coffin, grabbing what I imagined was Penny's hand. It wasn't. It didn't feel like a hand at all. It didn't feel human at all. Cold, slippery, slimy, wriggling. But I'm a doer, not a thinker. So I yanked the thing with all my might, which, despite what Penny claims, can be quite formidable if I do say so myself. The sound the thing made can only be described as otherworldly. It was a high-pitched screech of immense, deafening volume. It's like it connected with the itch, and they started copulating savagely in my mind. Whatever I did, it helped. Penny crawled out of the coffin, her face frozen in a horrifying joint expression of fear and shock. My doer powers struck again, and instead of helping her, I peeked into the darkness behind her with morbid curiosity. I didn't see much. Penny saw more, but she refuses to admit it. It had the body of a worm, coal-black and unbelievably large, coiling and slithering frenetically and frantically down there like it was trying to find a way out or down. But there was something else. A head of sorts, misshapen and disfigured. But I recognized it, even with the sickeningly twisted appearance. I'd seen that face before. Mrs. Trench. We didn't stay. Hustled up the ladder, ran halfway across the graveyard before stopping. Jules and Nate followed in close pursuit.
"What the hell was that?"
Nate screamed into my nostrils. "Mrs. Trench," I said. I saw her face on that damn thing. Penny was hyperventilating, couldn't catch her breath. I didn't blame her. I was barely holding it together myself. Jules lit a cigarette. She'd do that when she was nervous. She didn't even smoke, just liked the way it looked, she said.
"Look,"
I gasped.
"Take a look."
We edged closer to the open grave. It wasn't a good idea, but good ideas rarely enter play around here. We gathered around the body of Mrs. Trench, keeping an eye on the hole at all times.
"No way,"
Nate said.
"That's not a coincidence."
Mrs. Trench's body seemed fine, except for a horrible deep gash running from her pelvis all the way up to her head. And her head wasn't so much of a head anymore, more of a crater or an open avocado.
"You don't think," Jules said, waving her cigarette around wildly, "it climbed out of there?" "Of course it did," Penny whispered. "Nothing else makes any damn sense."
We were interrupted by a deafening screech from the hole. We didn't hesitate, grabbed our exhuminators and covered that sucker in record time, then dumped Mr. Foot back in his woeful residence and covered that too. Grimfell wouldn't be getting any treasures tonight. Well, that was some graveyard shift, I said. One for the books.
"Same time tomorrow?"
Penny smiled.
"You betcha,"
Nate saluted her. Champion disentomber.
"Need a new pack of cigarettes, though."
Jules winked. We don't have much around here. A psychic paperboy, the itch, parents that never seem to go to work, the graveyard, several mysterious disappearances, and a church that's never open. That's Fletcher's Point for you. But we do have each other. And sometimes that's enough. Oh, and of course, we also have the finer arts of corpse swapping.